Hi there, my name's Tristan and I'm a Zapier expert. And today I'm going to take you through the latest changes to the Zapier Workflow Editor so that you can get to know the best sort of setup for your Zapier workflows and all the different features so that you can make the most and keep your accounts organized and operating effectively. So we're going to jump straight in right now. Okay, so you've logged in to your Zapier account. And as we can see here on my screen, this is the new account that we set up just the other day in the first video that we filmed. And so you can see we've still got this, I think we get 20 days or 2 weeks free trial of the premium features, but we won't be using any of those in these videos, but I will still kind of show you a little bit of that as well. And then after that point, it's going to be $20 per month. But you can still do a lot with the free level account as well until you become more comfortable with more complicated Zaps. So this is the dashboard. We're going to go into My Zaps. Now we can see the one, if we go to the New Clients folder, we can see the one that we set up the other day in the other video. If you haven't seen that, you should check that out. And right now I'm just going to use this as an example so that we can discuss sort of all the elements of this page. So as you can see here, Zapier is welcoming us to the new editor. And if you've watched any other YouTube videos or any other videos about Zapier workflows, you probably will have noticed the old editor. It used to have a bar on the right-hand side, the left-hand side here. And now they've made it a little bit more flexible so the screen can be adjusted and you still get to see most of the Zaps. It's just a bit more user-friendly and nicer looking. And it also allows us to have some additional features on the right-hand side here as well. So we'll start from the top and we'll work our way down and we'll discuss each of these features. So the first and great place to start is with the title. So you can tell here that we have, this is the title that we ended up with the other day in the other Zap that we set up. So this is editable and it's very easy and you can just type whatever and you press enter and then it saves. And it's important, don't worry too much about the title being perfect, but I strongly advise you to always update or add something into the title. So you don't end up with Zap 1, Zap 2, Zap 3, Zap 4, or untitled, 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 and then you just don't know what is where. So any kind of information you can add to the title will bring value and will help you in the future. And also anyone else that ends up using the Zaps or the Zapier account as well. So they need to keep track and they can help kind of work out what it is and why you've created this Zap. So in this case, we created the first stage is the trigger. And so every Zap needs a trigger to begin with. And the trigger is the action or the thing that you're telling it to look out for. And when this thing happens, then start the rest of the workflow. So in this case, we had the trigger set up as when there's a new response in the spreadsheet in Google Forms. And then you go through, as we went through in the other workshop, or the other tutorial video, setting up the Zap. And so these are all the elements to set up the Zap. You have which app you're going to be using and what's going to happen is the trigger event, the account that it refers to, where it's going to happen, in this case for Google Forms. But these choices are always going to be different depending on the app or the platform that you're connecting into for the trigger for your Zap, and then the testing and what happened. And then you can always come here. You'll probably end up coming here a lot as you start to develop your Zapier skills. So you can see what is the data that's being pulled in. Because for the rest of the Zap, the only information you can add into the Zap is what gets pulled into this form, into this element here. So if the data isn't here that you're looking for, the field hasn't been pulled in, then it means you won't have it for the later stages of the Zap. And so you'll need to look at that and find out why or work out why the data that you're looking for is not being pulled in. And then we have the actual information under each of these fields. And you can also get more samples. We won't do that now because there's no other samples in this form. It's just an example. But in other cases, you might look at the Zap 2 or 3 weeks later and you need the most recent information that's come through. So you can just click on Get More Samples. And then we can go done editing. And then we then have the action that happens. And with a full account in Zapier, with a free trial, you only get to create sort of one-step Zaps. But with the next level account, the starter or any of the other higher accounts, you can then create multi-stage or multi-action Zaps. And so in those cases, we could add in additional stages. So we'll go through each of these in other videos later on. But for example, you could add in a filter stage to only filter in those that have, let's say, that have registered with a Gmail account or something like that. So you could say the email for the customer. I'll show that again, the email. See, that's the email that we've got that's come through on the form that they filled in. So whenever the email field contains at gmail.com, then continue. And in this case, it wouldn't have continued because if we look at the data that came through, the email address that we used is this one. So for example, instead, if we looked at just those that have my domain email addresses, for some reason we wanted to just filter for that, then we can instead do that, and we can run a test, and it says, yes, your Zap would have continued. So that's the filter, and there's many other Zapier actions that you can put in addition to other kinds of actions from all the other platforms that are out there as well. But we'll look at that later. So we have this third, or the first sort of action that's here, and then the second action, which is send that email. So we'll delete this for now. So on the right-hand side, you can see here, under each of these actions, triggers or actions, you've got a 3 dots for more choices. So in this case, it's very powerful to use for rename. So we have this here, new response in Google spreadsheet in Google Forms. So we can rename that, and we probably want to just say new client in Google Forms, or whatever you like. And it's also important, for the same reason it's important to change the title of the Zap, it's also important to change the trigger name or the action name as well, so you remember what is happening. When you have 1 or 2 steps, it's not too much of a big deal, but it's a good habit to get into, because when you have multi-step, and you might have 3 or 4 steps that involve a Gmail action or a filter or something like that, it's very easy to lose track of what does what. So then you can have, there we go. So we change this one to send internal email so that we remember that this is an internal email going. It's not like an email going to the client. And then the filter, we can rename that. Only terrific email accounts, for example. In this case, I'm just going to delete that. We don't need that there, but just to show you. And then you can also add in additional steps or actions that come after as well. So that's the flow here. And then if we look over here, we have these additional features that have been added in the latest version, or the latest update to the editor. So the first one is outline. And so it doesn't seem very impressive at this stage, but when you have some Zaps, I have some Zaps that I've worked on with clients that are between 25 and 35 or even up to 40 actions. And so it can be quite useful to have an outline which includes all of those. So you can kind of see, and that's why also it's very important to name the action clearly so that you can refer to it. You don't have to look it up every time to work out what that action is doing. But writing anything is better than nothing. And then it doesn't have to be perfect, but just something, and then you can always tweak it and easily rename it as you go as well. So that's the outline. Then you have the guide, which is from Zapier. So Zapier have some sort of, some videos to watch and some additional information so that if you lose track of what you're supposed to be doing, so you can look this up with some sort of help guide for some of the different Zapier actions. Then you have errors. So if there's been some error, let's say that it's not pulling the information properly, one of the actions isn't set up properly, or like later there's a break in some of the logic, then this should appear here in the errors. So you can keep track. It's quite common to have some errors, especially when you start to create slightly more complex apps. And so you just have to keep an eye out for those, and it's just a matter of working through those errors and fixing them. Nothing to be worried about. And then you have the task history, which will open a new page, which goes through the particular task that you're looking at, the Zap. It'll then go through the task history for that Zap, so that you can then see success or failure in terms of what's happened before. So this is one we ran the other day when we were doing the video. We put in some fake information for this person, John, and you can see that this is what happened. We had the information come through here. It was found in Google Forms. The data coming in was this from Google, and then the data being transferred into Zapier that we could then use in the later stages in the workflow in the Zap is this information here, which then got sent data in to the Gmail stage action, and then went, and this is what the email was then sent, and the ID details of the email. So you probably don't need all that information. You don't really need to know the ID at this stage or these things, but everything is here in case you do need later. And if this didn't work, it would then show different icons. And we'll talk about that in another video as well, but that's kind of a very simple beginner level overview. And you can go back to task history and you can actually see all the different tasks, all the different Zaps that have actioned, and if any ever had any issues here. You can change look at the different status and search for specific Zaps and the dates that it might have affected. And then the last part is settings. So here we can edit the name as well. So up here and also down here, we can edit straight away, add it straight away into folders, like so. We can write a little description. Whatever you want to write there. Don't have to write a description, of course, but it can be good to have a bit more information when you start to create more Zaps. And then the time zone. So if the Zap has any kind of stages or triggers or anything that is related to dates or times, then you'll need to be aware that what the local time is that you've set the Zap to run for. So even if you're editing this from another country or another time zone, it'll refer to this time zone or your account time zone as the default. So you've got to keep that in mind when thinking about adjusting times for, say, emails going or other kinds of updates happening in your Zaps. Okay, that's all those stages. And then the last thing, of course, to close this, is the on-off down here as well, to make sure the Zap is on if it's ready to go. It's very easy when you make edits. Every time you make an edit to the Zap, it will turn off the Zap while you make an edit. And then you'll need to remember to turn it back on when all the edits have been complete. Obviously, if you don't turn it on, then it's not going to action. And it's very easy to forget. So you turn it back on, make sure it obviously goes green, says on, and then you know that this is running again. And we can see it here as well. Okay, so that's it. There we have sort of a run through of how the Zap sort of feature, how the editor looks, and how you can make the most of that, and how you can understand all the different features of that. It's very powerful as we start to create more Zaps. You'll see all the different things we can do and the importance of keeping it clean and organized in your account as well. It'll give you less headaches later on. Thank you so much. That's it. So please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and we'll be releasing similar videos in the future as well. And feel free to check out all of our other videos around Zapier content and setting up your Zapier workflows effectively. And also in the comments, please feel free to share your questions or thoughts or any other things you want to learn more about, and we'd love to go through them as well. Okay, have a great day. Cheers.